Hi, everybody. Claudia McMullen here from Fluffy Cow Coffee. As you know, we are the only coffee company nationwide that supports farm animal sanctuaries, and we do this by having week-long online fundraisers benefiting a specific sanctuary somewhere in this country. And today, we are with the lovely Kate from Four Roots Ranch in Oregon. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Great we're so happy to have you because we want to hear all about Four Roots Ranch. And for the people listening, what's so interesting about Four Roots Ranch is it's a sanctuary for llamas and alpacas and others, but largely llamas and alpacas. And we've never had that before. So we want to hear all about why llamas and alpacas, where do you get the llamas and alpacas, like that kind of thing. So Kate, take it away. Tell us all about Four Roots Ranch.
Great. Yeah. So we are, as you mentioned, we're a sanctuary and we specialize in llamas and alpacas. We have 130 residents right now, and the majority are alpacas and llamas, but we also do have sheep, pigs, goats, a whole flock of chickens, turkeys. But alpacas and llamas are our specialty, and primarily because when we got started with animals, our first animals, actually, we took in quite a large herd from a rescue. This was back in 2017 before we were sanctuary. That kind of opened our eyes to the uniqueness of alpacas and llamas. We fell in love with them. And then over the years, we just kept taking in, alpacas and llamas that needed a home. So in 2019, we said, hey, let's make this official. We should become a nonprofit. We already have all these rescue animals. Let's go for it. So we did that in 2019, and that became our focus. And now we solely take in llamas and alpacas, and it's we consider it our specialty. So, yeah.
When you first started and you took in that large grouping, what were they, alpacas and llamas or one or the other? And how many what's a large grouping of?
There were 22. So that's considered large for us. There were 22, and those were all alpacas. And we had no experience with alpacas at that point. Thankfully, the rescue that we took them in from had great mentorship for us to have us get started. We didn't set off buying this property think it's going to definitely, house a bunch of alpacas, but we knew we had the land and a lot of love to give and a lot of space. So we decided on alpacas, but that is considered large for us. And then our last largest rescue was also 22, I believe is our lucky number, but 22 moms and then 14 babies by their side. Yeah. And those were alpacas as well, and pregnant, and some were newborn. So yeah, so we had a steep learning curve in the beginning, but we feel like we've got a lot of knowledge now, and we love actually sharing that knowledge because, as you said, I don't think as many people are as familiar nationwide with alpacas and llamas. Yeah. So we love the education aspect of it.
No, all right. So you start with 22 from an alpaca rescue. So why did you need to step in and take those 22? And where did those 22 come from?
So those came from, and this is not unusual, those came from a case of a man who had actually imported them originally in the 80s, had grown his herd, and then he had fallen upon some hard times and kind of got into a hoarding situation. Didn't have enough land for the animals, wasn't taking care of them anymore. They were all kind of crammed into into a small area. So when I contacted the rescue, she said, well, we've got this amount, can you help us out? And at that point, we didn't have any animals. So we said, sure. To us, 22 didn't really seem daunting because they had been together their whole lives. And the goal for us, and one of the reasons why I think we exist, is because we've been in a unique situation where we can take the larger herds.
Yeah.
We're able, because we want to ideally keep them together. Alpacas are definitely herd animals, and they should be kept in a herd, not individually. Even in pairs isn't great, 3 or more. So we said, well, we'll take them. They were all bonded with each other, so let's just take them all. And that's what we did.
So what is it about alpacas, both uniquely about alpacas, and 2, about where you live and the area surrounding you, that people get all these alpacas? And why do they get all these alpacas? Why would he import all these alpacas that became then a hoarding situation?
Yeah. So there was a craze in the 1980s. There was a big boom of people getting alpacas, selling, breeding them, because some alpacas from what we've heard, even still today, can sell for $16,000 an alpaca, really fancy ones. I guess, and I don't even know what that means. But so people were importing them in the 80s thinking, okay, this is going to be my business. I'm going to breed them. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to sell their fiber. And then things kind of cooled off and there wasn't, I think, so much of an economy for it. But what happens is people don't generally, from what we found, it's not like, say, a goat or a sheep. They're not just getting one or two, or a horse. They're usually getting a bunch because they have this idea in their head that they're going to sell the fiber or they're going to breed the animals. And then when that turns out that that's not making them any money and that they turn out that they have more complicated care, they just kind of, the owners can no longer take care of them when they kind of fall into neglect. Or we do have circumstances where we take in animals where they do come from well-loved homes, but the animals are up there in years and they don't want to obviously list them on Craigslist. We never want that. So they're kind of searching like, well, I don't want to adopt them out somewhere else. It's too stressful for them. I want them to go somewhere where they'll have a good retirement home. And that's what we are. And that's where we come in so they can join our herd and still live out their final days and months with a big herd. So that's kind of how they come to us. The first herd we got hadn't been sheared in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I believe it was, which is really risky. They can die of heat stroke really easily. So, and that's not uncommon for us to see now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, okay, what is it? Okay, a couple things.
Yeah.
One, what is the natural age range of an alpaca? How long do they live? Mm-hmm. 2, you mentioned that they're herd animals and they prefer to be together. So if you are somebody, so we want to make sure we let people know that if you are somebody who wants to somehow, for some reason, adopt an alpaca, you'd be better off adopting X number of alpaca from their herd so that they are not lonely and depressed. Yes. And third, what is it about the Oregon area and alpacas?
Okay. So hopefully I can remember in order. So your first question was
how long do they live?
How long do they live? Okay. So that is, it kind of varies. There isn't necessarily a set cap, on their lifespan. What we found is generally it's between 15 to 19 years and if they don't pass away in that time, then we have our oldest llama is about to turn 28 years old, which is extremely old for a llama. That's not usual, but it can happen. So it kind of just varies. I think a lot of our original herd that we took in are in their 20s now already, and they're getting great care. So, they're all in great shape, I think. So, who knows how long they'll live, but I would say generally the 20s would be an ideal situation for us to see them living into their 20s.
And when somebody wants, can somebody come to Four Roots Ranch and seek to adopt an alpaca or a llama?
So we don't adopt out our alpacas so we keep an all-female alpaca herd. We believe in separating the sexes of our alpacas. Even if a male is gelded or castrated, it can still sometimes be harmful to be in with the female because even though they lose the desire to want to procreate, they still can do the act and it can be damaging for the females. So ideally people want to keep males and females separate. And you'll hear different places believe this and other places don't. We believe that this is best for our females. So we keep an all-female herd. So the times where we have adopted out have been, for example, the herd that we took in 2022, there were 6 boys, 6 males. We kept them until they were of weaning age to make sure they were weaned and healthy. And it took a lot of work just to get them healthy. But we kept them. And then they all actually went together, which was our ideal. They all went together to an adopter, which is fantastic. And then it turned out in that herd, alpacas are interesting. So they can get pregnant anytime during the year. It's kind of on demand. They don't have a set season. So one of the moms who came to us out of that herd who had a 2-week-old cria by her side, unbeknownst to us, was pregnant again. Okay. So she gave birth a year later. They stay pregnant for about a year and had another male. So we kept that male. We got him healthy. We weaned him, and then he went excitingly to that same family that took the 6 boys, which was his brother was in that group of 6. So that's our ideal goal of when we adopt out. Also, if we're contacted about a healthy alpaca or llama and we know of potential adopters, then that's an ideal route for us to go. We kind of view it as there are some really fantastic alpaca and llama rescues out there that rescue and then adopt out right away. We're hoping to fill the void of those alpacas and llamas that are harder to adopt. So that we kind of like to be, we're your backup, I guess, if that makes sense. But if it's a healthy llama or alpaca and it can be easily placed, and that will be our first goal, is to try to place them somewhere else.
And what is the difference between an alpaca and a llama?
That is a great question, because there is a big difference. Well, just one in size in general. Llamas are much bigger than alpacas. I have some good pictures on our Instagram of an alpaca and a llama standing next to each other. Llamas are quite a bit larger. Usually ours are, upwards of, some of them 375 pounds, whereas our alpacas can be 120 on average. Their personalities are different. Llamas are a little bit more aloof. Some people use them as guard animals and will put them in their herd, and they're great at that in pairs. Some llamas are great at that in pairs, where alpacas are not interested in doing that, nor should they be used as a guard animal. Alpacas are a little bit more curious, more likely to, I think, come up to you, want to see what you're doing. So that, and then just generally, you can always tell, and I tell people this because it's funny sometimes, and now these people watching will know this. You'll see a picture of an animal on the internet or on a pillow in a store, and it'll say like alpaca something, and it's truly a llama. How you can tell is llamas have banana ears. They're shaped like bananas, so they curve inward. That's like a very easy distinction between the other two, whereas alpacas have like kind of like almost like little teddy bear ears. They're shorter, but so yeah, that's a little inside tip.
Are llamas also pack animals? Do you want people want to get more than one of them should they want to adopt?
Yes, always, I would say get more than one. Never, no responsible rescue or sanctuary that adopts out should ever be adopting out a single alpaca or llama, unless that's going to some place that already has them. But yes, they definitely are herd animals. They need to be with their own kind. It isn't a substitute to put them in with a horse or put them in with goats and sheep. We see that a decent amount where people will say, oh, well, they're bonded to our goats and sheep. No, they should actually be with alpacas and llamas because they have their own method of communication.
And so when you so say somebody wants to adopt one alpaca or one llama, and there are other alpacas and llamas at the adopter's place. How hard is it for them to bond with a new group of alpacas or llamas from the one they leave?
I actually don't think it's that hard. I mean, there's a little bit of a period where they might, be figuring out their pecking order within the herd or figuring out the dynamics. Generally, we've now onboarded hundreds, I guess, of animals, and we've never run into an issue where an animal just hasn't fit in. Sometimes there will be fighting in the beginning to try to figure out, like I said, who's in charge. But that usually settles down and they're okay. So, and we have a policy that if at any point over the life of the animal, if it doesn't work out, then they come back to us versus going on to Craigslist or them trying to sell them. We don't not want that. And we would never adopt out a male that isn't going to be castrated because we don't believe in breeding.
Sure. Okay. Now the last question for the general knowledge, why are they so popular in the Oregon area? Because we have not been exposed to that many alpaca and llama rescues. And then we find you, and you have so many.
I think it has to do within the 80s. It just became a thing out here when it took off. And then it just, because I wouldn't even necessarily say that it's a climate thing, because it isn't. I mean, alpacas are quite hardy animals, not as hardy as their cousins who are in South America, but they are hardy. And so they can handle different temps and whatnot. So they could be in other parts of the country, but I think it was just a craze that took off here. And then that just sort of became our niche. And it's interesting to me because, we have so many organizations out here dedicated to alpacas and llamas. And I actually don't think, we originally came from California before we moved here in 2016. And I don't think I saw an alpaca until we moved to Oregon.
Right.
And which is interesting to me as an adult. I was in my 40s, but I just had never interacted with one. So we're in the hotbed of alpaca land here, though.
We sure are. Yeah.
We are.
Gosh. Okay. Now let's talk more specifically about Four Roots Ranch. You have 130 alpacas and llamas, other species as well. And how big is your property?
So our property is 40 acres. We have it divided, though, I would say probably about 25 acres. We have fenced and cross fenced and different outbuildings. So we have everything laid out. We have, we put a lot of emphasis on herd dynamics, which is why sometimes, and this might even be a question you're going to ask me, but sometimes people say, well, do you have room for more? And it's never a question of room for more for us. It has to do with herd dynamics. It has to do with what's our workload at that given time. We can take in, like right now, we took in a 5-month-old alpaca who's demanding a lot of our time and finances. So it isn't necessarily how much space do we have to put the animals on, because the last thing we want to do is to cram them in here. We're trying to give them as natural a habitat as possible. And we pride ourselves, I think, on them having a lot of space and being allowed to do their own thing. We're not on top of them. In fact, we don't care if they like us and they want human interaction or not. It's not our job to make them friendly and, make it so you can go pet them. Our job is to make them happy here and to feel like they can relax and be at peace. So part of that is having the space and having them just be part of their family. And then we're here to give them, great care and feed and medical and whatnot. But otherwise, it's like we want this to be as relaxing as possible. And part of that is not cramming animals in.
So I bet that also means, correct me if I'm wrong, that you probably don't have tours.
Yes, because actually it is linked to that, because it can be stressful for the animals. Right. So we don't have open to the public hours. We do tours, like organized events for, not organized events, events for organizations or youth groups. We will do that because like I mentioned, education is a really big thing for us. Right. I used to be a school teacher before this life. So I really love that part of all of this. So we'll invite, youth organizations to come and do a tour, learn about the animals, and then try to blend in an art component afterwards. So we do things like that. We don't have just open hours though. And we don't have a large volunteer team by choice because we're family run. We've got 4 kids who have grown up with these animals, and everyone is hands-on, and that's the way we like it. So we have our routine. I think with 130 animals, we have to have a routine. Yeah, we have to be pretty efficient. So we sort of have our own thing going. And I think just open hours is kind of tough because also people see alpacas and they think that because of the media and whatnot, or sometimes you'll see an alpaca on TikTok, they'll think, oh, well, can I pet them?
Exactly.
They do not like to be pet. They don't. Okay. Once in a while, you might have one that does, but no, they don't. They don't like to be. And in fact, you can actually, if you over socialize an alpaca or llama when they're young, they can get something called berserk male syndrome, but it can be females too, which is extremely dangerous. They bottle feed babies. You'll see some of these who have an alpaca in their house. It's actually one of the worst things you can do, because then that alpaca or llama gets older and thinks that you're part of its herd and thinks it's in charge, and they don't bite normally at all, but they can bite, they can kick. It can get extremely dangerous. So that's one of the things too, when we adopt out, we stress, like, we make sure we raise the babies in a way that they're not overly comfortable with us. It's hard because they're so darn cute. You want to just like scoop them up and hug them, but one of the worst things you can do. So
what are the plans for Four Roots Ranch for this year and next year?
So we've been leaning more into the education aspect. We do community outreach, which is a part of this that we really love, which is, what is it? The saying, an ounce of prevention is worth, a pound of cure. It's like an ounce of education is worth a pound of rescue, is the way we look at it. Because if we can educate people here in our community or help them understand how to take care of alpacas, then possibly they can keep their alpacas in a better environment. So that's a big portion of what we do. And not just for alpacas, we do it for the other species that are in, we have here as well. Like we have gone on site and done housing consultations. We'll loan out our coats to alpacas in the winter. We've, provided help with feed and whatnot. So we're leaning into that a lot because we want to be that type of a resource. Grief resources as well. I've had people who have called that have been in tears that have, they had 2 alpacas and one of them died and they know they needed to find another one, but they're just in a mess, understandably, emotionally. And so we try to offer some, not counseling, we're not counselors, but we try to help them through that. And those are times where we may say, hey, if you need some animal therapy, then we can open up our doors for you. So we do those kind of one-offs. So that's sort of what we're leaning into this year. And we have some things planned in the spring and in the summer for some youth organizations, also a local grief group that we wanted to open the doors to. And then also because it's near and dear to our hearts, one of our sons has a disability. So the local disability community, we're going to be doing some work with as well. So that's awesome. Kind of on our radar. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So let's talk about the fundraiser.
Yeah.
Fundraiser began Monday morning. It ends Sunday at midnight. I donate $2.50 for every single item sold on the website during the course of the week-long fundraiser. So we want to get the word out to your fan base, and our fan base includes really cute mugs. Yes. If you don't drink coffee, the coffee's fantastic, but if you don't drink it, we have lots of fun swag, species-specific swag. We do not have llama and alpaca swag. You are first.
Not yet.
Not yet. And anyway, so $2.50. And Beth is also going to give you a shortened URL so that if you had a fan who liked the coffee and wanted to come back and get a subscription, we would donate to you every time that person gets their subscription.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah.
That's pretty fun. Anyway, so we have 3.5 more days because it's Thursday morning and we need to get the word out to get people to buy so that I can write you a big old check Monday. Okay. Now tell me, like, for example, what would like a $300 donation, what kind of impact would that have?
So our most recent rescue is, her name's Bitsy, and she is a 5-month-old alpaca cria who arrived to us, or we took her in last minute because she was on death's doorstep. This was in January. She was malnourished and full of parasites, and we've been bottle feeding her back to health, and she's had repeated vet visits. So for example, even this week she had a vet visit. That vet visit was, I think like $240 just for a single vet visit. So our thought is we'd love to be able to use the money from this fundraiser towards our Bitsy fund, because she is what you call a failure to thrive cria. She had a rough start in life. So chances are she will always need medical care.
And always be Bitsy.
Yep, exactly. So she's one of those cases where it'll be nice to have funds set aside for her medical care. I'll say this just really quickly, briefly, but alpacas are interesting animals in that they get their immunity from their mothers. It's passive immunity, and they have to get it within the first 12 hours of being born. They need to nurse and get the colostrum from their mom, and then that passes on the immunity to the baby. If they don't get that, then they are set up as, immunocompromised. And it sticks with them their entire life. So anytime there might be a parasite or illness that the rest of the herd could easily be able to kick, failure to thrive, alpacas cannot. So she's one that we'll just always keep our eye on. But thankfully, she is doing a lot better. We're still treating her and whatnot. But this is what we're hoping to use these funds for. So we're so grateful. So thank you. The timing couldn't be better.
Awesome. All right. So now, Kate, our charge is we've got 3.5 more days. We've got to spread the word. We got to get people to buy because we want to donate to the Bitsy Fund.
Yes.
To make sure that baby, that immunocompromised baby, has a long, healthy life, and there's enough funds to take care of her when she gets sick.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
All right, Kate. Well, you have a great weekend. Fingers crossed that we just do a great job, and I write you a big old check on Monday.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Bye.
Bye.